Namaskar and very good morning to all of you, and welcome to the parallel technical session, the last parallel technical session, second last parallel technical session in Hall A. Welcome to the chairman of this session, Dr. J.P. Narayan, and co-chair, Dr. Chittaranjan Nayak, and the SOAP lecture speaker, Dr. Bansal sir, and welcome to all the participants. Before I introduce the chair and hand over the session, let me take you to the conference platform. I hope you are able to see my screen. So
Yes.
Joining the 3D platform. I just wanted to show the participants how they can ask the questions to the speaker. I hope that 3D platform is visible to all of you.
Yes, please visible.
Thank you. So once you enter the lobby, our program is happening in Hall A. And if you click play, so it will be visible. So all the delegates are attending from this 3D platform. And here is the question answer tab actually. So if you have if any participant has any question, they can click this Q&A tab and post your questions there. That will come to us in the Zoom. Thank you. So it is my pleasure to once again welcome the chair, co-chair, speaker, and all the participants to Parallel Technical Session 25. It is my pleasure to introduce the chair of the session, Professor J.P. Narayan, who is a professor in the Department of Earthquake Engineering at IIT Roorkee. He involved in the development of an efficient finite difference method for the simulation of seismic wave propagation and study of local site effects, both basin and topography, as well as study of site-city interaction effects and site-specific strong ground motion prediction. And also he has worked a lot in simulation of ground motion characteristics based on wave propagation. And it is the need for today's cost-effective earthquake engineering as per his opinion. And he has also worked on seismic hazard prediction, risk evaluation, and seismic microsonation. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
And Dr. Chittaranjan Nayak, today's co-chair of the session. He is presently working as a faculty at Vidya Pratishtan's Bajaj College of Engineering and Technology, Baramati, Pune, and he has 14 years of experience in teaching and research, and his expertise lies in structural engineering and earthquake engineering, and he acts as a reviewer for many national and international journals and published several papers. He is also the life member of ISTE and ISET, and he is also an active consultant. Welcome you, sir. With this, I hand over the session to chairman and co-chair to kindly take over, please.
Thank you, Dr. Srivastava. And good morning to everybody, and a very warm welcome to all the participants as well as speaker to this 25th session of 7th IGROSHI. And it's my pleasure to introduce you Dr. B.K. Bansal. He completed his PhD master degree in applied geophysics from IIT Roorkee and PhD degree in geophysics and seismology from Andhra University. Presently, he is director at Presently, he is advisor at Ministry of Earth Sciences, New Delhi. He has published more than 70 papers in national, international journals as well as conferences. He has also worked at Nuclear Power Corporation, Mumbai, as well as Department of Science and Technology, New Delhi, as scientific officer. With this brief introduction, now I invite Dr. B.K. Bansal to deliver his lecture on mitigation of seismic hazard through science and technology intervention, the Indian scenario. So for today's lecture, although there were two speakers, but one of them is not able to present because of this rain. So I request Professor B.K. Bansal to please present your lecture, and you can take as much time as you wish. Okay, so it is over to you, Dr. B.K. Bansal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Co-Chairman. First of all, let me extend my warm wishes to the organizers to, give me a chance to be part of this international conference. In fact, I was informally discussing with the organizers that this conference is going very well because the feedback has come from, several quarters. And I would like to make a small correction before I share the presentation that I have recently superannuated from Ministry of Earth Sciences. So my designation is no longer remains to be active advisor and director of NCS. So with these words, I think I would like to share the screen now. Could you see the screen, please? My slides are there now?
Okay,
Yes.
it's visible.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm talking about the overall risk reduction approach because every one of us is aware about the earthquake activity in the country and the vulnerability of our subcontinent. If you see, there are three, major fault systems in the country, and of course, Himalayan faults is the largest one. Everyone is aware, whosoever working in the field of geoscience and earthquake engineering. Then it comes the rift system like Kutch and Narmada, which are again, capable of producing large earthquakes. In fact, they have produced the large earthquakes in the past as well. And third, of course, is the unrifted crust where the Kilari earthquake happened. If you see, I have just plotted the seismicity of, in the instrumental era. And the earthquakes have been plotted from greater than or 4 to 8 plus. In fact, only the great earthquakes are seen in this picture, unless because I said that this is in the instrumental era, this our historical earthquakes, which are pre-instrumental era, are also shown in the picture. So I clearly saw that, I don't know whether the cursor comes. Yeah, it comes. You clearly see the Himalayan arc is totally, with so many earthquakes and going down to our Andaman Nicobar Island, etc. And similarly, we have some concentration over here. If you see in the past history of India, we have about 5 large earthquake, I mean to say 8 plus, which includes here, I have plotted the 1505, which is a little bit contingent, but we still consider it 8 plus magnitude earthquake. And of course, we have 1819 Kutch earthquake over here. So why I'm trying to show these figures that the vulnerability, seismic vulnerability of India is very well known. But if you see how we have really progressed in terms of mitigating the impacts of these events, I still feel that we are really, we means the developing countries, particularly where India is part of it, is still far behind than the progress made in the developing countries. The figure is a bit older. It was given by UN, and when they say that between 1900 and 1949, about 7 lakh people killed. So out of that, 70% were in the developing countries, while only 30% in the developed countries. And with the progression again in 50 years, we see that while the developed countries have been able to reduce the calamity, reduce the impact rather, I will say, the damage, etc., to 10%, we are still in the same level, 90% again in the developing countries. And I am very sure that this figure is still really in the existence. I mean to say that still it is true. So again, I'll just, for the sake of completion, I would like to say that in the recent study, a scenario was developed like, earthquakes like if Kangra earthquake or Bihar Nepal earthquake of 1934, if they occur today, what kind of casualty would be there. And it is estimated that about 51,000 people to 549,000 people are in the, exposed to that kind of earthquakes, which expected casualty would be there. And of course, the affected people will be much more. So this is just to show how, the seismic vulnerability is there in the country and what we should do. So the risk reduction approach, which basically, include the three aspects: what kind of scientific studies are required, for example, prediction of earthquake, hazard assessment, and then what kind of building codes and construction of structures are to be done, and of course the public awareness, which is much more important, and we are giving really sufficient due to it, but this is slightly required in a much more systematic fashion. In fact, I will come to that point again. So as far as earthquake prediction is concerned, I think we are aware now, fully aware, that at present, we really don't have any scientific technique the world over, which is capable of, predicting earthquakes with the desired level of accuracy in terms of its location and at what time, and of course the magnitude. Therefore, in absence of this earthquake prediction, we have to plan our efforts in a way that we have to somehow combat, face these challenges in future. If we see the initiative taken for accurate hazard assessment, etc., have been taken at national level by the agencies at government through various organization, academic institution, university, etc. Whether it is a monitoring of earthquakes through seismic system, or establishment of strong motion arrays, or GPS monitoring, test and calibration facilities, and of course the zonation at micro level, and the last and but not the least, but is very important, to give a scenario of the postulated earthquake, what kind of earthquake ground motion is going to happen if such and such magnitude earthquake hit in a particular location. Because if that kind of information is available to us, we probably do our structure design. We can put the system in place so that if the area is really highly vulnerable, we can make it free from the habitat. We can develop a kind of park or such things. So if we talk about the National Seismological Network, which is maintained and operated by agency called National Seismological Center, it has the mandate to maintain and operate this national network, and the progression of this network is really very, very good, though a bit slow initially, but it has picked up quite nicely. And soon after this 1897 earthquake of Shillong, I think we progressed quite nicely, and I think it is written over here. You can see from the panel that we progressed slightly, and now we are in a very good shape. The present network has about 115 observatories, which are well connected from remote stations to our central seismic station at New Delhi. And the data is really being processed in real time, as well as once it is done in the automatic mode, our scientists at NCS, they are able to review and pass this information through various media. I will show that slide as well. For example, the location, time of occurrence, magnitude, what kind of expected intensities are there at different location. It is all this information is shared by NCS to various stakeholders, which includes National Disaster Management Authority, State Disaster Management Authority, media, and the person concerned, other person concerned. And we have several media to propagate or to provide this information. Of course, website, is one of them. Mobile application which has came into existence about 2 years back. It is widely accepted and utilized by the public. SMS, and recently we have started this WhatsApp message also. And these WhatsApp messages have been really restricted to some people who are really supposed to take care in case any earthquake event of major size happens in a particular area. All the state disaster agencies are hooked up with this WhatsApp number with national agencies. And the present level of our location is remains still 5 minutes for automatic location and 10 to 12 minutes for reviewed location. Similarly, because we are talking about the scientific intervention, I would definitely, supplement with this, with the geopositioning system. In fact, in late 90s, this geopositioning system program was formulated and launched by Department of Science and Technology, and the objectives were very clear. Because initially, you might remember that the plate motion, we used to say that it is 55, 54, or 53. The uniform kind of plate motion is there, but it is not so. So with a view of that, we had launched this program to constrain the movement of Indian plate, identify the region where the strain accumulations are taking place, what kind of convergence rates are there along specific faults and boundaries. And I'm really happy to say today that when we had 50 systems about, I'll say 15 years back, now we have more than 200 systems. Exactly, if you ask me, there are 244 systems in place. But somehow what is happening that these systems are not being maintained by a particular agencies. These systems are being run by various agencies. In the forefront is National Geophysical Research Institute. Then we have our Geological Survey of India, Wadia Institute of Himalayan Geology, IIT Kanpur, and CMAX. So many agencies are involved in maintenance and operation of the system. And of course, recently, India Meteorological Department for other purpose have also established about 19 systems, but they can be utilized for our scientific work in the geoscience. So I mean to say that the facilities are being created or have been created as per the need. Now the things come how we utilize in the best manner these kind of facilities in terms of data, etc. Other facilities which were supposed to be backbone to the earthquake tackling problems is like Shake Table, which was Roorkee University at that time, in fact, was the pioneer where the Department of Science and Technology, in fact, that time suggested and supported the Shake Table facility. And cyclic triaxial system, I think it was set up at several places after ISC. And we have this high-powered computing system now in place in India. And I understand we are the only third or fourth country in the world, the kind of capability we have in the computing system. And geochronology, of course, 50% of this facility is already available. Which is called HR SIMS system has been established at IUAC at Delhi, and this is the first of its kind in India. In fact, this is the first system, I will say, and probably Geological Survey of India is also planning to have this system. This is going to be complemented with the other system of with the AMS of 10 MeV. So that is going to really help us in a big way. If we talk about the earthquake precursors, because we are not able to really predict the earthquake at all at this moment. So a thought was floated some time back that we must really monitor closely the different geophysical parameter, geophysical or geochemical. And initially in 90s, early 90s, I will say that these precursory studies were started in India. And of course, there are many, as I just mentioned, geochemical, electromagnetic, thermal, water level changes, or seismological. And if I just show you, this is the slide which shows the radon observations. And this was by Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar, where Dr. Virk used to work that time. And first time it was reported after this Uttarkasi earthquake of 1991 that there is some anomaly prior to, this earthquake of magnitude 6.1. Similarly, after this Chamoli earthquake of magnitude 6.8, the helium anomaly was also seen in the observation by the same group. The another group which was working or is still working, the Shah Institute in West Bengal, they are also actively engaged in helium radon monitoring at Barkeswar. And this 2004, the mega tsunami-genic earthquake was studied by them in a very big way. And if you see, the radon anomaly is very, very prominent before this, 26th December earthquake of magnitude 9.3. On 17 and 18, you see this anomaly, very, very prominent anomaly. Similarly, they have tried to show the ratio also, helium and this CH4. And here also, if you see on 20th and 21st, a good anomaly is seen, observed. So this is all been reported by them. And one more prominent precursor was, the magnetic field in the ULF range, and where this Dr. Birbal Singh and his group was very active in Agra to monitor this activity, and they reported this changes in ULF range before this 7.6 Kashmir earthquake of 2005. And this is not that anomaly was seen at one time, it is seen at more than one time. This was the earthquake, in fact, on 8th, and it was seen here also on 5th. It was here on 27, 28, and etc. etc. The another important parameter which was seen as promising one was the thermal observation. So thermal observation, we put a system, in fact, IIT Roorkee put a system with the support of Department of Science and Technology at that time. And they studied many earthquakes, in fact, but I am just showing one slide to you that this was the 23rd of January, and the earthquake happens, this is 27, so earthquake happens sometime in between. So a change in temperature or rise in temperature was reported up to 7 degrees. If you see this is very, very, prominent here, the change or the rise in temperature. But this is the only one example. I mean to say, there have been several reports on thermal anomalies which have been reported for different earthquakes, not only in India, but the world over. In fact, Dr. Saraf group studies several earthquakes in Iran and other parts of the world. So this is also a good anomaly to study with. In fact, I must say now that these observations or these studies were done independently, because some people were engaged in helium monitoring, some people engaged in ULF, VLF, some people in other parameter. But then it was thought at national level that we should have a systematic program on earthquake precursor studies so that every parameter is monitored at one place, and all these parameters are seen in in an integrated manner, whether changes are taking place in different field together or there are only changes which are taking place in a particular field. Like I will say that the instrumentation, you can see several instruments like broadband seismic system, accelegraph, GPS, magnetometer of different kinds, and this superconducting gravimeter. This is again the only one which came first to India, was established, and this observatory was established by Wadi Institute of Himalayan Geology, and subsequently similar observatories were established at Tejpur, Imphal, etc., etc. But this superconducting gravimeter only remains at Guttu, and water level changes, etc., were the another parameters. So this systematic observation of different geophysical fields have really helped in a big way. And I must say that several earthquakes have been now studied, like this Kharsiali earthquake of 23rd July. This was magnitude less than 5, in fact. And the anomalies were again, reported in the radon before the earthquake. And I think this is slightly doubtful, but still it is reported. So I'm just showing this figure as well. So these are the radon counts. If you see, that is a 10-meter depth, and this again is 50-meter depth. And the effect of rainfall, in fact, has been removed. It's not that due to rainfall, everything is there. So effect of rainfall has been removed very nicely. So this is a anomaly in radon in Kharsiali. Similarly, there was a change in the gravity also of the order of 5 gals. So that was very distinct, actually, very distinct. And this has been reported in a good publication. Similarly, if you talk about this Gorkha earthquake of magnitude 7.8, again, helium and radon has been reported at different depths very clearly. These are the sequence of earthquake here, actually. So there is some change in the radon, and water level changes have also been shown here in the figure. This is very not clear, but I think you just to give you an idea, I have just put the figure, otherwise it's not very clear. If you talk about 2016 earthquake of magnitude 6 plus in Manipur, that was exactly M6.7, the co-seismic changes were observed. The offset you can see here slightly, but here in this component of east-west, that is very prominent. So that is seen in the GPS data. And more recent, the Tejpur Observatory have reported very good anomaly in the different field of radon. There was a magnitude of magnitude 5.6. In fact, there was no such earthquake earlier in that region. And very clear, the earthquake was on September 12, but there is a continuous monitoring. And if you see the panel A, it is here. On 24th July, the some anomaly seen. Then B on 28th of July, this shows the anomaly. Then again on 29th July, and then August, also 4th August, and then lastly on 29th and 30th August. That was in radon. And similarly in the geomagnetic field also, the clear anomalies were observed in different dates prior to the, this is again, I have written on the panel, you can read. This is on 16, 17 August, B is 18, 19, and this is on 26, 27, etc., etc. So these anomalies are reported in the total magnetic field. Now, what inferences one can draw from these precursory research so far? What I feel very strongly that there are many earthquakes, more than 20 plus earthquakes of magnitude 4.5 have been studied in very detail, and most notable changes have been observed in radon, helium, magnetic field, gravity changes, etc. And many techniques have been tested on this data to isolate the precursor signal, like principal component analysis, polarization, or polarization effect, fractal analysis, multiple linear regression, etc. And we have really, learned a lot with this earthquake activity in the country, and we have learned how these different parameters behave during an earthquake. But the most important question still remain that the analysis is being done in hindsight. I mean to say, after the earthquake. When earthquake happens, the data is being looked by our people located in different institute, and that's how the research is being carried out in this particular field so far. Now the third component, or the second component, I will say, the hazard assessment and building codes. So if we talk about this map is known to everybody. This is a very popular map of zonation, seismic zonation of the country, where it shows that how different areas of our country are vulnerable to the earthquake activity. So this I need not to spend much time on this. I'll just show some slide on the damage because it is important in the context of the presentation. If you see the Bhuj earthquake, this was very disastrous one in terms of building damage, and most infrastructures were damaged in this earthquake. Whether it is you say due to liquefaction or due to amplification, whatever it is. Just to show a few slides, that is the liquefaction damage at different areas, like roads and other fields, etc. Similarly, the ground motion amplification have damaged the big buildings here also. And the question, very important question, which I would like to say, we really don't know if big earthquakes, happens, what is going to happen to our vital structures like our hospitals, or if you see here, this non-planned buildings are there, and here we have all planned buildings. We really don't know in the major earthquake what is going to happen in this, particularly the non-engineered structures. So these are very pertinent question, and the earthquake engineering people really need to give a little more thinking about the vulnerability of specific buildings, how they are going to really affect in case there is earthquake and they are damaged, how we are going to manage. So that really demands that the zonation of seismic zonation, which I shown the map, it need to be further detailed out, and that's how the need of micronization was felt that time. And there, what is the main issue in the micronization is that let us project the possible damage scenario and develop sound procedure for accurate assessment of the vulnerability and risk, etc., and then develop the building codes, of course. And if you see the micronization, in fact, it is used by many people in different ways. If you ask what is micronization, by definition, it is most, I will say, appropriate definition given by Sharif et al. I will just read it. Process for identifying relevant geological, seismological, hydrological, and geotechnical site characteristic in a very specific region, and then incorporate them into our land use planning and design of safe structure to reduce the our further damage due to large earthquakes in future. So that is the definition by book. But here in India, what is happening that if I really put different zones on the basis of geology, that is also called micronization. If I put the specific areas in terms of liquefaction, that is also there. But ultimately, the true micronization has to be done by integrating all these different identities. I'm not saying that these are not required. In fact, each and every identity, whether it is geology, geomorphology, or amplification, ground motion amplification, or predominant frequency, liquefaction, etc., everything has to come. But micronization in true sense has to be the integration of all these aspects altogether. And what are the steps? Steps, I think I need not to elaborate, because many learned people must be there who understand the micronization much more than me, what I understand. This is, of course, for the sake of my presentation, I must say that what is the most credible earthquake, we have to really do that study. And of course, we have to develop this attenuation relationship and ground motion, how the particular site or local site is going to behave, what kind of expected P ground acceleration, P ground velocity, and response spectra is going to be there. Then geotechnical characterization and liquefaction hazard, which was in fact was not given much importance, say 15 years back or 20 years back. It has proved that it is one of the most important aspect, and that's why probably this conference plays a very important role, particularly on geotechnical aspect. And then of course this maps, etc., to be prepared. So the end product is going to give us the different kind of maps. You can read it: the bedrock, subsoil, peak ground acceleration, I just mentioned, projected scenario, and generalized design input, because this is the crux where ultimately the output of this exercise has to be utilized. And of course, the beneficiaries are, most of us are the beneficiaries, include the general public as well. Whether there is disaster management authority, urban development authorities, planning, risk assessment, defense installation, heavy industry, and of course the public utilities, etc., etc. Now, again, the Ministry of Earth Sciences, it took the lead, or I will say it taken over of the Department of Science and Technology, initiated this effort in the Jabalpur first, and then this subject matter was, came into this Ministry of Earth Sciences. So many cities have now already been done. If you see the blue circles, they show where the migration has already been taken place. So they are completed cities in all respect. And all the agencies, I really personally, as well as on behalf of these two organizations, DST and MOES, I must appreciate the effort of all the members of those institutions who were involved in undertaking this, these studies. These were very important and very field, exhaustive field, studies were there. So people have taken a lot of pain in carrying out these studies. And now Ministry is again concentrating on 4 more cities. They are particularly in the southern part. And further, 8 cities have already been initiated about 6 months back. They are basically in the Zone 4 and Zone 5. So this is being done through Institute of Seismological Research in Gujarat, Ahmedabad. So these are the micronization cities, which is at present either done or in the process of completion. And I'm sure these 8 cities will be completing again in 2 years or so. So just to show the synoptic view of Jabalpur, how these maps were prepared. So all these were basically bit qualitative, I will say, this moderate hazard, high hazard, and the along the fault, how it is going to happen. So this kind of map was prepared for Jabalpur, but slightly detailed map was prepared for Kolkata and Guwahati. And this work was done basically IIT Kharagpur and other partners. And if you see, this is very good map, in fact, I will say, where it quantifies or gives the hazard index, where it is going to be high, say in the range of 0.55 or greater than 0.5. Like here, it is going to be very, very high. So these kind of maps are very useful if they are taken in a proper manner. And I am sure that these maps are being utilized by all relevant agencies which are engaged into planning and preparing the master plan and construction or design, etc. This is similarly for Delhi. It was done. Here it shows the higher hazard in the area. This is again little bit quantitative, and low hazard area particularly is, etc. And it has been further strengthened and detailed work has been done for this purpose, and where exactly what kind of ground motion is expected has been determined for Delhi region. In fact, Delhi is a very good example, I will say, because it has been done in very detail. And here it shows that our most of the region lie below say 0.2 or almost 0.2 G, what zone factor we are using for Delhi region. Only with a small area of say 1 square kilometer, it shows the hazard of the level of zone 5. So all these studies are really very important and give us confidence to really further design and design and construct our houses or major infrastructures. And this is, of course, based on the work carried out by different groups. The guidelines have also been prepared, how the migration should be done. And a manual, in fact, was prepared with the help of IIT Kharagpur, where Dr. S.K. Nath was the main leader and guided all the work in this respect. Though all these guidelines are available for the use of general public and people who are at the helm of affair, they are available, and researchers can really make use widely of these books. Similarly, I just mentioned that how the ground motion is going to happen in a kind of postulated earthquake. If an earthquake of magnitude 5 or 6 happens in a particular area, what kind of ground motions are expected in different regions near epicenter or slightly away from epicenter. And several such studies, in fact, have been taken up. Recently, a colleague of mine, Mr. Anup Sutar or Dr. Anup Sutar, has taken up a study in the northeast in Kopli region, where he, estimated the potential of the Kopli fault, the present potential, how big an earthquake could generate this particular fault, and it was estimated that whatever we had seen in the past, still it has the potential of magnitude 7.3. And utilizing both the approach of green function approach, though I have written here stochastic, but both the approach he utilized, and he has postulated that a magnitude, not magnitude, the PGA of the order of 360 gals is expected in the epicentral area. So this kind of exercise is really very, very useful if somebody, or not somebody, I will say the state government, state agencies wants to take up something in the area for development, future development. These studies are going to help us in a very big way. Our engineers can definitely take it just as it is and put their design, the time history and the response spectra, and give the design of the particular structure to be built in the area. Or they can suggest what kind of buildings can be done, or what kind of building can be avoided in the particular area. Another important aspect of the risk reduction approach is the early warning, which is very important, and some effort has been done in this respect also through IIT Roorkee. There was a system in Taiwan, well-tested system in Taiwan, and it has been working very nicely. Here, what we have done, we had identified an area of about 100 by 40 kilometers in central Himalaya, where 100 systems were located for the earthquake early warning system. This work was done in the leadership of Dr. Ashok Kumar Mathu and with his colleagues, several colleagues at Earthquake Engineering. But what has happened, because I will say prior to that, I'll just show you that it's a very simple system, a simple PA alert. It was costing that time, I think maybe 1 lakh rupees maximum. And here the system was based on the 3 major parameters: the prominent period, the average period of ground motion, and the peak displacement. And a kind of lead time was estimated ranging from 5 to 37 seconds for Dehradun, and Delhi it was around 70 to 90 seconds. So it was based on basically the different location of earthquake in the Himalayan region. But what I was trying to say that the system was established and it has been working for quite some time. In fact, I understand that it has been expanded now with the help of state government of Uttarakhand. It is, I think, more than probably 200 systems now are in place. And this system is now being looked after by Department of Earth Sciences, probably in association with Earthquake Engineering Department. But major question still remain that, for example, there was a earthquake in Rudraprayag in 2017, I suppose, or 15, of magnitude around 5. So we really could not get the desired, output that time. But I am not criticizing this. We are in a learning phase, and definitely these kind of exercise should continue, because here in our country there are several issues like connectivity, like power problem, etc., etc. We are not like developing countries where everything is perfect, and of course the location, particularly the hard terrain, Himalayan terrain, etc., it is not easy to really maintain that kind of power requirement. So these kind of efforts need to be really continued. And recently, I will say that this USGS, they have developed a system which appears to be quite robust, but not fully, I will say not 100%, fault free, because we had a big meeting with them, and they have admitted that they are also in a kind of experimental phase, though they have launched it publicly, and most of their warnings are found to be true, or found to be they came true. So that has to be done. But my point is that we really need good infrastructure to maintain and to run or to operate this system before really going to public, because once you go to public for these kind of warnings, and if we fail sometime, in India things work very differently. People will not accept even one failure. So we have to be very careful, but at the same time we must continue these efforts. Whatever in Israel also, in fact, I will supplement Israel. People have also developed a new system for earthquake early warning, so we can have some kind of consultation and collaboration with them. Talking about the awareness, which is, though people may not be very, giving much attention to our awareness and education, but this is, I feel this is a very, very important aspect of our overall strategy to reduce the risk of future earthquake activity. And scientifically, if you talk, we at Department of Earth Science and Technology, we had specifically, taken up a program for school students that time, and where what we have done, we have selected about 100 schools in Northwest and Northeast Himalaya, and the overall goal was that we will train the school teachers, and we will, through those workshop, etc., will tell how the routine activity or earthquake analysis is done. They in turn will teach the student and provide them the classroom material and develop their skill, etc. And of course, students are the I think best carrier of the information. They can pass this information very quickly to their colleagues, to their parents, to their relatives, etc., etc. So that was the whole gambit of this. And if I talk about the objective, there's a very clear objective that let us develop that culture of measurement among the student, give them a platform. They can interact with their colleagues, their teachers, interactive learning kind of thing, then capacity building and earthquake observations. And of course, if they want to go for higher level of education, they can definitely take it a platform, and they can put their education, or they can really opt this kind of education in their career as a specialization or as a full-fledged activity. And if we talk about, because there were several schools, and interaction amongst the school was very important, that was one of the aspect. And of course, in addition to awareness, these systems were so good that even the sensor were about 40-second period response. So the data of that system could be directly used for research purpose as well. So I'll just give an example. These are just the figure where these systems were put in the northwest and northeast Himalaya. That time we targeted about 50 to 60,000. This was in fact a perfect system, like we have the broadband seismic system. All the things were similar, except that it was slightly lower cost. Nowadays we have 100-second period, or we go to 120-second period, or sometime more than that. So just show you the example, the perfect record of an earthquake. This earthquake was in 2006. I think it was in northwest Himalaya. And if you see, this perfect system. There is nothing different between what we are utilizing broadband and that time we put those systems. This was in fact northeast, I'm sorry, this was in northeast, north and northwest. So I mean to say we can utilize in a very different way. And if you see the 2005 earthquake, based on the public response, there was a paper, in fact, it was prepared on based on the intensity estimation. It was published by a group at that time. And this is pure scientific work, in fact. Similar activity have been further expanded in the Maharashtra, because Maharashtra also, they are there. I'll take only 1 or 2 minutes more. Yeah, these were just figures how the people were trained.
Okay, please continue.
Yeah. So I'll just what two slides are remaining. So still, I feel the major concern. What are the major concerns? See, this is a picture of Shimla. What kind of construction we have? See, this is a picture of Aizawl. What kind of construction we have? Similarly, see, it's a Guwahati. So if any earthquake really happens, what are our preparation? What we should do, what we can do? Because there is hardly any place to get out, to run away. There's nothing actually, if you see how congested and they are there. Nobody can get out of it. They will definitely going to lose their life. So particularly the most priority, number one priority should be, our priority should be that we must evaluate these buildings, particularly which are located in a hilly region, or they are sitting on the slope, etc. And then if possible, we must retrofit them, because there is no point, we cannot raise those buildings, we cannot allow people, but we cannot do anything about those buildings except we evaluate and retrofit them. So the state government really need to worry about it. And the second point, this implementation of building bylaws is really very important, because we are doing it, but I think we need to be much more serious about implementation of this bylaws. And the next point, what I would emphasize, that characterization of local faults or active hidden faults is again important aspect, because for particular structure like hydropower dam or nuclear power, etc., people are trying to take care of these things, but still what I feel that even our normal structure which are important or which we consider as vital, these kind of things should be taken care while preparing a design. The multiparametric observatory, what I said that we are doing at hindsight, so probably this is the time now that we do it in real time, and we are able to provide the information before the earthquake that look, this is the anomaly and there is a possibility of an earthquake of such and such magnitude. Using nowadays this AI, artificial intelligence and machine learning, they are in the forefront, and probably I think this can make a difference in this particular field. And of course, expansion of network, we should be at par with the other nations, and this I must say that we are going very nicely in this particular aspect. Now in 115, we are adding 35 more stations, which will be another 2-3 months. I think they are all in place. And we do have plan to further strengthen it in the near future. And of course, GPS measurement is a very crucial thing. If we have the good concentration of GPS along particular features, particular which are we consider which are important features, they should be fully covered with this GPS to accurately calculate or compute the strain built up in the area. And of course, the EEW I just mentioned, we need to really do some concerted effort. The training of local masons and the best practices in seismic design is another important aspect. And awareness need to be done on regular basis. It is not that we do some kind of workshop or some kind of lecture. It need to be done on regular basis, particularly for them who really are directly involved, whether they are mason or local engineers or PWD people, that need to be carried out. And lastly, but very important, mock drill has to be taken care as a kind of regular phenomena by our management authority to tell the people what is our preparation, how we should really behave during the time of such eventuality. I think that's it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Co-Chairman, for giving me sufficient time. And I would be really happy to answer your queries, if any, from any quarter.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bansal, for your very interesting and informative lecture. Dr. Nayak, we have some lecture for Dr. Bansal.
Yes, sir.
So whether we should take up it or...
Hello, I have joined. It will take a few minutes. Rastogi.
Okay, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. And in a few moments, actually in my house, there was power outage. Now it is connected in NGRI.
Okay.
So I can speak now. So you can give my introduction or something, whatever you want.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Srivastava. Dr. Srivastava.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, please.
I am here now.
Yeah, sir.
My presentation.
Before going to that, should we take a couple of questions I see there are maybe 1 or 2 questions to Professor Dr. Bansal, sir.
Okay.
Some questions in the question answer chat box.
Okay, Dr. Nayak, can you
read out 1 or 2 questions?
Read out the question number 1.
Presentation.
Hello, sir. First question is, with large number of population residing in endogenetic plains with non-engineering construction and Himalayas having a seismic gap, what is the way forwarded to save the lives?
So that is really very interesting thing, because I just said that ultimately, in absence of earthquake forecast or earthquake prediction, what we have presently, the 2 important aspect in our hand. One thing is properly assess the hazard. What is the hazard level in terms of expected ground motion due to largest earthquake expected in the region, and then construction to be done or design to be done according to that. As far as the existing structures are concerned, they have to be evaluated, because there is no other way. We don't have any kind of authority that just raise the building like that. So apart from that, and of course the earthquake early warning, which is really our dream, or rather it may happen soon also, that will give some kind of really relief once it is really established. But at this moment, except our accurate hazard assessment and inbuilt into our design, or second, evaluate and retrofit, there is no other way.
Okay, thank you, sir. Second question is, different hazard assessment studies and microorganism give different results and hazard values. with large variations. How to select a reliable value after microgenation? What is next step to safeguard life and properties?
Now, once the microgenation is done, you are having in hand the values in terms of hazard index, for example. And now the second thing comes about your vulnerability, and third thing is the risk. So vulnerability, you know very well, this is if we have the high hazard and the earthquake is in, in island where there is no habitat, the risk is zero actually, isn't it? So we have to have this good survey of vulnerability of different urban centers which are highly populated, convolve it with our hazard and find out the risk. So accordingly, based on the vulnerability, we have to take a strategy, in cognizance.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next question is from Dr. Sanjay Verma, Jabalpur MP. He asking, sir, what is the current status of Jabalpur microgenation?
No, Jabalpur microgenation was done long back actually, I must say, and it was why it was done because we had a good amount of data set that time. That earthquake happened long back.
97.
Yeah, 97, and the terrain was good. There was no, hue and cry. If you do in Delhi, people will come from insurance, this and that. So that was the best example to establish the methodology, and that is already out. In fact, if somebody wants to do in a particular large scale, say 1 to 10,000, this is possible to do because now methodology is very well established. So furthermore, it is not really done at our end, at least.
Okay. Next question from Madhusudan Reddy. Sir, usually while doing hazard analysis, we will consider aerial sources or will divide our selected control regions into multiple seismic zoning zones. On what base will do these zones exactly? If there are any specific criteria for this?
Actually, the overall zonation depends on the seismicity. If you plot, for example, if you take northeast, you plot the seismicity on the map, and you carry out the, say, for example, B value analysis or this kind of activity, and based on that you can do that kind of zonation. The B value analysis is very, very important.
Okay, sir. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nayak.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Srivastava, please. It's my pleasure. Now we have Dr. B.K. Rastogi. Good morning, sir. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. B.K. Rastogi. He did his MSc and PhD degree from IIT ISN Dhanbad. Presently, he is president of Indian Society of Earthquake Science. He retired as a Director General in Institute of Seismological Research, Gandhinagar. He has also served at NGRI Hyderabad as a head seismology division. He has done pioneer research work in seismic microgenation, earthquake hazard assessment for critical structures like dams, nuclear power plants, natural gas, terminals, as well as high-rise buildings. He has authored a book named Dams and Earthquakes, published by Elsevier, and authored more than 200 research papers with more than about 5,000 citations. With this brief introduction, now I invite Dr. B.K. Rastogi to deliver his lecture. And I request also to limit your lecture within 20-25 minutes. Dr. B.K. Rastogi, it is now over to you.
Sir, I think he again lost his action because I am not able to see him in the panelist. Maybe
Okay, try.
For
Let's-
yeah, wait, I will just call him. Yeah, meanwhile, if there is any additional questions to Dr. Bansal, I think, is there any additional question unanswered? I think all questions have been answered. Yeah.
Sir, it is all question and answered, sir. No
Yeah,
question
yes,
is.
yes, yeah.
So I am free from your end?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, sir.
No,
I
it's
think
a pleasure.
Dr.
Let me
Rastogi is
really-
connecting now.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, really. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, sir, you can share your screen.
Yeah, Srivalsa, can you put my, actually, if you have my presentation, you can connect my presentation and I will speak on mobile here.
Okay. Sir, when did you send me the presentation? From your which email ID, sir?
I had sent to Pawan.
Oh, I have not received yet.
Are,
Oh, I was not informed about that. Oh, you have sent to Pawan. Or if you can send email to me, I will just quickly download and share here.
वो presentation है वो इनको आप भेज सकते हैं श्रीवत्सा ये देखिए email ID. I am trying to send that to you.
Yeah, if you can forward, I can share. I have not received actually. I was unaware of that.
Yeah, Srivalsa.
Yeah, yes, sir, yes, sir.
At NITK.
Yeah, please. Yes. Okay.
Srivalsa at NITK. At NITK. NITK.edu. हमारा presentation पे.
Not yet received, maybe.
He is sending, but you
Okay.
can, is introduction everything over?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Then
You can start
maybe
speaking
I
as soon as I
can start speaking extempore.
Yes.
I
Sure.
can start. Okay. Then thank you very much, Seventh Ragi, for letting me speak extempore for the time being until the presentation is received. The work in, say, Gujarat in many types of geological environments has been done seismic hazard estimation at individual sites as well as microzonation. And individual sites have been about a dozen ports of Gujarat, and then some high-rise buildings, and many other critical structures like nuclear power plants, natural gas storage and distribution terminals, Statue of Unity, so many other places. And then microzonation also some 6-7 places. Some times there was support from MOU, and now some 8 cities are being microzonation is being done by ISR, and so that is though I am retired, but still I am having permission to present this presentation on behalf of ISR, and the work has been done by many scientists of ISR, and here I will on हो गया इधर I can
Sir, your voice is breaking. I think it could be due to poor internet connection.
I'm from laptop also. Anyway, so there are many types of geological, geophysical, and geotechnical investigations done. There is a full-fledged geotechnical lab at ISR, and Professor T.G. Sitaram's help was sought in constructing that lab, and that is functioning well. And in this scheme, what we are taking up is first, say, seismicity map within 50 kilometers for near faults, and also up to 300 kilometers for distant far field fault, earthquake. So earthquake is assigned, and also then hello.
Yeah, yes, sir. Please go ahead. Whenever you want me to go to the next slide, you can tell me.
Okay, now you have slide. Okay, good. So you have the first slide where seismicity map and all is written. Second slide, and then no, sorry, back. Do you have this seismicity map? And for radius 50 kilometer and 300 kilometer, then we have a geological map with us, and then seismotectonic map also, and geomorphological map has to be prepared afresh, because every 5 years geomorphology of an area changes. So it is done by remote sensing and then field check. And it is done to know the drainage pattern and geotechnical nature of layers. So, and digital elevation map is also required, because that is also needed. Then in this lecture, I will not speak much on the earlier aspects, but I will speak a little more on the geophysical methods for knowing the faults in the area, because that is very important. And अच्छा वही कर रहे हैं, ठीक है. Then geotechnical investigations are done by drilling up to 50 meters and sometimes even more. SPT values are noted, lithologs are prepared, The soil properties, all kinds of soil properties are done at ISR. And then we make through 2D, 3D soil type mapping and depth to different layers. And engineering bed layer depth of EBL is determined, and it is decided when VS is more than say 450 meter per second, and it is present in the entire area. And for this, we need sometimes for deeper layers, geophysical methods and broadband seismographs, microtremor recorders, passive seismic, and shallow seismic. So this is the another aspect which I will speak in detail today. And here, what we do for seismic hazard is assume time history of acceleration, knowing from taking from stochastic finite fault source modeling, and it is given by one Mota-Desian and Atkinson paper, and then it is even at the EBL. And major thing is above EBL, we have to know all the layers in detail. So at the base of EBL, this is assumed, and then it is passed on through the computer program, and then we determine at surface. So at surface, what we find out is acceleration ground time history, and then amplification, as well as PGA values and response spectra. And on this basis, then we determine duration of shaking and also liquefaction potential. Next. So this is here what we have, the how VS30 is determined. One is determined by PS logging, which is left side top is shown. And then VS map is prepared with depth, and also with the Maswa method, shallow seismics. This kind of 2D layer, 2D sections of 100 meter, 150 meter are prepared and then extended. And this is the kind of say layer and velocity, depth and velocity are prepared. We compare that with the SPT N values, and usually they tally, but is sometimes what happens, there is some problem in SPT N value. So that is corrected from the basis, on the basis of VS. Then we determine the 2D and 3D soil map. And on this basis, next, we can prepare, next slide. We can prepare this soil profiles at different boreholes, and this kind of then this is at the base of this. Then we put the input seismic hazard, and then it is passed on through the different layers, and then on surface it is determined, and then it is say here what we have in the top middle is the spectral response, and then that is used then for final. And duration, strong motion duration is also taken out from this particular output, and also the maximum. So this is an example of VS30 map what we prepare with different methods, and this is in a special investment region southwest of Ahmedabad. And it is VS30 map is prepared. It is, good morning, sir. 5 smart cities are coming in this, and futuristic cities are there. But here, right hand side, also VS was measured up to 20-30 meters. And then what we saw that damage in Anjar was much more in these places where VS30 was less, and there was less damage where VS30 was more. So here it is showing in a nutshell the studies where what we have done. Here it is the Dholera Special Investment Region, where we showed VS30 map, the left hand top left hand side, and here on the center top is the GIFT city, and it is near next to ISR, and here 100-story building is planned and so many other buildings. Two buildings of 28 stories were prepared, ready at that time, and now many other buildings are ready. Here is the Statue of Unity, where we did seismic hazard assessment, and also the strength of foundations and all layers. Here multi-story structures, nuclear plants, and here multi-story building. And here LNG terminal at Mundra and Dahej left side town lowermost, and then ports of Gujarat. So all these places, seismic hazard assessment on site, as well as microzonation of Ahmedabad, Gandhinagar, Bhuj, and Surat, many cities also completed, and 8 more cities are being undertaken with the funding of MOES. Next. So next, you can tap one more here. Inauguration of 20-story building is again tap on this slide. Next. So here inauguration by at that time CM and now Prime Minister Modi. So I was standing in the back here. So the Modi Sahab noticed me and asked, "Is this building designed earthquake resistant?" I said yes. They have actually we suggested to have the zone 4 parameters, safety parameters taken instead of zone 3, which is national code here. And also the foundation should go below the liquefiable layer, which was discovered at about 15 meters. So the piles were then on our advice taken below that, and then it is safe. So here what we found that as you know, it is the seismic zoning map of India, and zone in zone 2.1 PGA, zone 3.16, zone 4.24. So like that PGA is given. Next. We found that near the faults, as it is given in the code also, that within say 10 kilometers, you have to do your own studies. What we found that even up to 15-20 kilometers, the hazard is much more, maybe 50% more than what is expected. And so we recommended in this Gujarat, it is applied that special investigations have to be done even up to 20 kilometers if magnitude 6 is expected, but up to 40 kilometers if it is more than 7, near about 8 magnitude in Kutch area. So that is what is being followed. And here then next we see that the left side you see up to 2 to 4 hertz, there is maybe more than 50% more acceleration is recorded. And so that is what our recommendation was, and it is applied that up to 20 kilometers we have to have a special investigation for magnitude 6 to 7 earthquake, and also for magnitude 8 up to say more than 40 kilometers. So that is the recommendation followed at least in Gujarat. Now here, if time is there, we'll discuss that with this seismograms on top, we can find several layers and their velocity depth of several layers, and we have to assume, depending upon geology, the approximate velocity, and then depth of here, say Gandhinagar area, there is tertiary and Deccan Trap boundary, which is at about 4 kilometer depth. So here it is 0.2 hertz. Quaternary tertiary boundary, and that is with this 0.7 hertz frequency up to at 340 meter depth, and quaternary 1 to 2 at 1.5 hertz is at 100 meters. So like that, rough idea is obtained of layers. So here this in Gandhinagar micro tremor also see 0.7 or this layer 340 meters, that is visible. So in the other area, Dholera area also, with the natural earthquake seismogram, we can know some depths like that. What is the depth up to basement? It is 5 kilometers, and Deccan Trap and Mesozoic boundary is at 350 meters. Quaternary and tertiary boundary is at 100 meters, and Holocene 1 and 2 boundary at 15 meters. So here we can see that from micro tremor study, 3 hertz, this particular layer, the topmost layer can be seen, and at a depth of about 15-20 meters. Next. So this is very useful for our deciding on layers and their strength and velocities and engineering bed layer. This is a map of a VS30 map, and different geological conditions are there, from hard rock up to soft soil. So in soft soil, there is up to 300 meter per second, and in hard rock, in Deccan Trap, it is about 800, and hard rock is 1500 up to 1500 meter per second. This kind of velocity map is already prepared. Next. So this is the map of predominant frequency, what has been obtained. So in soft rock, it is, I think here I cannot see, it is up to say about 4 hertz, then 3 hertz and 2 hertz, like that, different 2 to 5 hertz natural frequency. So here in a deterministic way, we made a map of deterministic seismic hazard map of Gujarat, based on different faults which are there. So this is for left side in Kutch. There are major faults and major earthquakes which can be there. So these are the faults and expected earthquakes of magnitude 7 or more. So then this kind of map is prepared, PGA map, and in Kutch it is maybe 0.3, 4 or up to 0.5, 0.8 G or so in Kutch, and it is less in other say, and also at surface we can see this is slightly more. So PGA and spectral acceleration at 10 hertz is like that, and 2 hertz is like that, 1 hertz is like that. So we can see what could be the hazard deterministic way in this area. So this is the estimation of strong ground motions at 32 sites was done. So PGA and spectral accelerations range is in Kutch area, PGA is 500, in Saurashtra it is 200, and it is the mainland, it is 50, and these are the spectral accelerations. It is quite high in the Kutch and less in other areas. So here we are coming to identification of faults. This is very important. Sometimes it is needed also to prove that there is no fault in the area. So that also negative finding also is to be done. This was the problem in Mundra LNG terminal site, and there was some map in GSI which showed some fault nearby, but when we found it is not based on any study, anything, so we had to find. So this is for very shallow layers. Earlier figure also here the GPR method up to say 40 meters or so, it can be applied. So we can see that there is a fault at some depth and also at surface. So this 3D mapping by GPR can be done for near surface. And also for here we can do from MASWA method also shallow surface fault can be identified. On surface we can see there is a fault near Kutch, Bhuj, and with depth 20-30 meters, the velocities are going, lower velocities are going like that. So here also we can see electrical methods also up to say 75, 80, 100 meters. It can be seen very nicely. These faults can be seen that some fault is running like that in the. So for still very deep layers and even up to more depth, we can use gravity method. So we had used gravity method to know the major faults which are there, say like Kutch mainland fault and a transverse fault in Kutch, which was also active. So gravity method can be used. Next. So this in section we can see that sudden change in gravity in top figure. You see this is the Kutch mainland fault on top center. You can see some sudden variations on surface layers. Basement is showing some fault, and also more depth and all that also is interpreted from gravity method. Next. So like that in detail here there is some intrusive structure there which is giving very high gravity. So here also some more concentration of stress and strain is there. So we have to find out these geological structures to know what is in store in future. At least for very critical structures, we have to know all these information. Next. What we found that magnetotelluric method gives really very good mapping of faults, almost like seismic method. And here we can see the where 2001 Bhuj earthquake was there. This is the causative fault of that. It can be seen, and further north. I mean, causative fault was this, but this is also a major fault which was earlier active for 1957 Anjar earthquake. And here also this actually causative fault is like this. The one fault is here. So like that we can see. And here also we saw in the Dholera special investment region, nobody had done this kind of mapping. Here there is only a speculative fault because there is a basin east in the sea basin there, Cambay basin. So there has to be a fault that was assumed, but nobody mapped that. We could map by magnetotelluric that it is about 1 kilometer away from the 500 meters away from the coast, and it is like that. Next. So here it was we did outsourcing of 2D seismic reflection survey, and to show and to find, to give a negative finding. It was also given that there is a somebody mapped a fault, some triangle line is no problem, so there was a line drawn, but there also was no survey. On what basis it has been shown as a fault, nobody knew. So we had to do the survey to negate that there is no fault. We have this kind of thing, so there is no fault, only some gradual away from the coast in the sea. So this kind of finding also was very useful. Next. One more thing what we do, which nobody else is doing, is knowing the future hazard, what kind of earthquakes are possible. So we do recurrence interval for active fault. So all these active faults, we have already prepared a recurrence period, and for next very large earthquake of 8 magnitude or 7.5, like that, when it could be there, like that also is very useful, and that is what we do. So yeah, thank you so much for patience and disturbance during my lecture. Thank you so much, Sri Valsa and TG Sitaram and the organizers. Next. Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rastogi, for a nice lecture, even with network problem, during network problem. I think, Dr. Nayak, we have some question for Dr. Rastogi.
Yes, yes, sir. There is no question till now.
Okay, no
In
question.
chat box.
Okay, during this session, there were two lectures given by, one lecture given by Dr. B.K. Bansal on mitigation of seismic hazard through science and technology intervention. He presented the Indian scenario. His lecture was more towards earthquake recording, different areas, how they are being maintained, as well as scenario of seismic microzonation at national level. Dr. Rastogi presented various techniques, that is geotechnical, geological, and geophysical techniques for site characterization, as well as in deep seismic microzonation of Gujarat area. And he also presented how to find out, map various seismogenic sources in Gujarat area, as well as what is the return period on each seismogenic sources, which will be very much useful in future for doing seismic hazard prediction as well as seismic microzonation. In nutshell, we can say that to develop a earthquake-proof city, seismic microzonation is essential. Further, as you know, nowadays multi-stories are coming. For example, 30-story, 50-story, even more in future. So we have to map entire sedimentary deposit up to depth of basement. Depth of basement means where our shear wave velocity is more than 1800 or 2000 meters per second. Now we should not concentrate only up to VS 30. We should concentrate up to VS 2000, VS 1800, means depth up to which we have sedimentary deposit. So entire sedimentary deposit is going to play a major role in damage during earthquake. And considering these high-rise buildings, and particularly, as you know, during this Bhuj earthquake of 2001, there were unexpected damage in Ahmedabad city. Multi-story buildings were damaged, 10-story, 12, 15-story building. And there was no damage to houses or buildings having story less than 4-story. So this selective damage was because of large magnitude earthquake here in Bhuj, 7.8. And as you know, your earth acts as a filter, so high frequencies were removed. And because of occurrence of double resonance phenomena, means resonance of building's natural frequency with the natural frequency of entire sediment deposit in Ahmedabad city was responsible for selective damage. So we have to think in future that how to find out sedimentary deposit up to depth of basement, so that we can avoid unexpected damage to high-rise buildings, as well as our city should be smart as earthquake proof. With these few words, now I wind up this 25th session of 7th Higrashi. And thanks to both the speakers, Dr. Bansal and Dr. Rastogi. It's over to you, Dr. Srivastava.
Thank you, sir. So on behalf of the organizing committee, I sincerely thank Chairman of the session, Professor J.P. Narayan, and co-chair of the session, Dr. Chittaranjan Nayak, for very efficiently conducting this session. And thanks to Dr. Bansal and Dr. Rastogi for delivering excellent presentation, very interesting presentation on seismic hazard assessment and seismic microsonation, very relevant topic. And special thanks to Rastogi that in spite of the difficulties, he made a point to join here and made a very effective presentation. Thank you, sir, for your kind gesture. So we appreciate and salute you for that. Once again, thanks to all the listeners, participants, and thanks to chair and co-chair. Special thanks to both of them for conducting this session very effectively. Thank you, sir. Thank you. We conclude the session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.